bread merchant filled the backpack of a hungry girl. 12 years later, a luxury car appeared in front of his stall. In the quiet small town of Los Angeles, a new day began as the first rays of sunlight illuminated the marketplace. Henry, an older baker with a kind face and hands roughened from years of kneading dough, was setting up his modest stall. The aroma of fresh bread and pretzels filled the air, drawing the first customers. While arranging his goods, Henry noticed a girl standing on the opposite side of the street. Her clothes were worn, her hair disheveled, and her gaze lingered longingly on the bread. Henry's heart ached. With a gentle smile, he beckoned her over. The girl hesitated, unsure if she should approach. "Come here, my child," Henry said warmly. Slowly, she stepped closer, her eyes still fixed on the bread. Her thin frame and timid demeanor told a silent story of hardship and hunger. When she finally approached, she kept her eyes lowered, as if ashamed to be there. Henry noticed how she hesitantly buried her small hands in the pockets of her tattered coat, searching for coins she clearly didn't have. Her pale cheeks, in vacant expression, left no doubt. She was not only hungry, but carrying a deeper emptiness. "What's your name, child?" Henry asked softly, breaking the silence. The girl didn't respond immediately, then murmured, "Lily." Henry nodded and retrieved a fresh pretzel from his basket. "Here, Lily, it's important to have something in your stomach." But Lily stepped back. "I can't pay for it," she stammered, looking down. "Don't worry about the money," Henry said, offering the pretzel. "Sometimes, what matters most is that someone gets the help they need." Lily finally accepted the pretzel with trembling hands, as if it were a priceless treasure. Before she could thank him, her eyes darted to her old, worn school bag. Henry guessed she wanted to take more to feed others, not just herself. Without a word, he grabbed a small bag, adding extra bread and pastries. "Take this for later or for your family," he said. Lily stared at him with wide eyes, tears forming as she accepted the bag. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion, then quickly turned and ran off as though afraid the kindness might be withdrawn. Henry stood silently for a moment, watching her disappear, wondering what circumstances had brought such a young child to this point. But one thing he knew for sure, he would always help her if she needed him. After Lily vanished, Henry returned to his work. The small market began to fill with customers eager to buy his fresh bread. He greeted everyone with a smile, though his heart felt heavy. The encounter with Lily had moved him deeply. As he packed rolls into bags and counted coins, he couldn't forget the sadness in her eyes. Henry lived a simple life. His days began before dawn preparing dough in his small bakery. The hours spent kneading, shaping, and baking were physically demanding, but he loved his work. However, it was a constant struggle to make ends meet. The income barely covered ingredients for the next day and his modest rent. That evening, as he packed up his stall and stored the remaining bread, his thoughts returned to Lily. What must this poor child be going through, he wondered. Henry had raised children of his own, though they were now grown and lived in distant cities. His wife had passed away years ago, leaving his life lonelier than before. The work at the market was both a distraction and a way to stay connected to the community. Yet the thought of Lily lingered. He wondered if she had gone home and if there was anyone there to care for her. Henry was a man with a generous heart. Though he had little himself, he was always ready to share with others. These values were instilled in him by his mother, who had always kept a bowl of soup for neighbors during hard times. That evening, as he swept the last crumbs from the market stall, Henry resolved to bring extra baked goods the next day in case Lily returned. It wasn't much, he thought, but it might make a small difference for someone like her. The following day, before Henry had fully set up his stall, he discreetly scanned the area, hoping to see Lily again. Hours passed before she finally appeared. As before, she stayed at a distance, her shoulders slightly hunched as if trying to disappear. Seeing her made Henry's heart ache, but he refrained from calling out, not wanting to startle her. This time, Lily waited until all the other customers were served before cautiously approaching the stall. Henry greeted her with a warm smile. "I'm glad to see you again," he said quietly, immediately handing her a small bag of bread and pastries. Lily accepted it, but this time she hesitated longer before leaving. "Why are you so kind to me?" she suddenly asked in a soft, almost shy tone. Henry paused, looking at her. "Because sometimes in life, we all need someone to support us," he replied sincerely. "You don't have to do anything to deserve it." The following days became a routine. Lily appeared regularly, always at the same time, and Henry always had a small bag ready for her. She spoke little, but Henry began noticing details. The holes in her shoes, the pale patches on her arms, and the way she carefully packed each piece of bread into her bag as if saving it for someone else. One day, Henry cautiously asked, "Do you live with your family?" Lily hesitated, then nodded, but her eyes revealed more than her words. "My aunt takes care of me," she murmured. Henry felt there was more behind Lily's words, but chose not to press her. Yet that day, he noticed a change. Lily seemed more anxious than usual, constantly glancing around and appearing to be in a hurry. When she left, Henry was left with a growing sense of unease. Whatever the girl was going through, it was clear that her visits to him were more than just a gesture of kindness. They were a small anchor in her difficult life. In the quiet hours of the evening, as he prepared dough for the next day in his small bakery, Henry often thought of Lily. He remembered how she would clutch the bag of baked goods as if it were the most precious thing she owned. He wondered if she knew how much her visits had also meant to him. They had brought a touch of purpose to his otherwise monotonous days. But no matter how much he hoped, Lily remained absent. Winter came, bringing cold winds that gave the market a different, somber atmosphere. Henry could only pray that Lily was somewhere safe. Yet deep down, he couldn't shake the worry that the girl he barely knew might be in need. This worry stayed with him. As time passed, the memory of Lily began to fade for most people at the market. But not for Henry. He often thought about the girl with the hungry eyes, wondering how her life had turned out, whether she had found a family to care for her or if she was still on her own. Henry's own life had also changed. His work had grown more exhausting over the years. The heavy sacks of flour he carried daily seemed twice as heavy as before. His face was lined with deep wrinkles, and his hands bore the marks of countless hours in the bakery. Despite the physical toll, Henry continued to do his work with love. The market remained a place of comfort for him, a connection to the community, even though loneliness often weighed on him. His wife had passed away years ago, and his children had their own lives, far from Los Angeles. They occasionally sent letters or called, but their contact was sporadic. Henry understood that they had their own responsibilities, but it still left him feeling lonely at times. One cold morning, while setting up his stall, Henry found a small cloth pouch in an old drawer that he hadn't used in years. When he opened it, a single long-dried piece of bread fell out, one of the pieces he had once packed for Lily. Holding it in his hands, it felt like a relic from another time. A wave of nostalgia swept over him, and he smiled, a bittersweet smile. This small reminder showed Henry why he did what he did. It wasn't just to earn a living, but also to do something good, no matter how small it seemed. That hope was what got him out of bed every morning and gave him the strength to carry on, even in his darkest moments. It was an ordinary morning. Henry had just begun arranging his freshly baked breads and rolls when an unusual sound caught his attention. The loud hum of an engine broke the peaceful silence. He looked up and saw a gleaming black luxury car slowly rolling over the cobblestones of the marketplace. The car seemed out of place among the modest stalls and the simple folk shopping there. It stopped right in front of Henry's stall. The door opened, and an elegant black stiletto heel touched the ground. Henry froze, the breadbasket still in his hands, as he watched a woman step out. She was impeccably dressed, a tailored coat, an expensive handbag, and shining earrings. Everything about her suggested she came from a world far removed from Henry's humble existence. The woman stood for a moment, as if taking in her surroundings. Her eyes scanned the market until they landed on Henry's stall. Her gaze lingered, and a small smile played on her lips. Surprised by the attention, Henry nodded politely and turned back to his work. But before he could continue, the woman slowly approached him. "Are you Henry?" she asked, her voice clear, with a hint of emotion that Henry couldn't quite place. He looked up, slightly puzzled. "Yes, that's me," he replied cautiously. "How can I help you?" The woman didn't answer immediately. Instead, she studied him closely, as though searching his face for something. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a photo, holding it out to him. Henry hesitated before taking it, then looked at the image. It was a young girl with large, hungry eyes staring back at him from the photograph. Lily. Henry's heart skipped a beat. Before he could say anything, the woman continued, "I'm Lily. Do you remember me?" Her smile grew wider, and Henry felt a wave of emotions wash over him. He stood frozen, the photo in his hand, as the elegant woman's words echoed in his mind. "I'm Lily." It was almost unbelievable that the shy, malnourished little girl he had once given bread to was now standing before him. transformed into a confident, successful young woman. "Lily," Henry finally whispered, as though trying to confirm what he had heard. She nodded, her smile lighting up her face. "Yes, Mr. Henry, it's me, and I've come to thank you." Henry's thoughts raced. How was this possible? What had happened in all those years? Before he could ask any of the countless questions swirling in his mind, Lily continued, "I've thought about you so often. When I had nothing, you gave me bread. Not just food for my body, but hope. You showed me that kindness exists in this world." Her words touched Henry deeply. He remembered the small gestures he had made back then, never imagining the impact they might have. "But Lily," he said quietly, "I only did what anyone should have done." Lily shook her head. "No, Mr. Henry, it was more than that. For me, it was a turning point." She told him how, after disappearing from the market, she had been taken in by a foster family who provided her with love, support, and the chance to go to school. Even in her darkest moments, she had thought of Henry, the man who had shown her she was worth helping. Henry listened silently as Lily spoke. It was as if pieces of a puzzle that had been missing in all these years were finally coming together. When Lily finished, her eyes glistened with tears as she said, "I'm here today to show you what I've become, thanks to your kindness." "What is this?" Henry asked, bewildered, as Lily handed him the envelope. She looked at him with a loving expression and said, "These are the ownership papers for a small bakery. I bought it. For you." Henry's eyes widened as he stared at Lily in disbelief. "A bakery?" he asked, his voice filled with amazement. Lily nodded. "Yes, Mr. Henry, I haven't forgotten you, and I know how hard you've worked all these years. This bakery is now yours. You can continue your craft without having to stand out in the cold. You deserve a place that's truly yours." Henry was speechless. He looked at the papers, then back at Lily. "I can't accept this," he stammered. "It's too much." But Lily shook her head. "It's nothing compared to what you've done for me. You didn't just give me bread, you gave me back my faith in the goodness of the world. Now it's my turn to give something back." The people in the market had noticed the scene and were now gathered in small groups, whispering and watching. Henry felt tears streaming down his cheeks. "Lily," he said softly, "I don't know how to thank you." Lily smiled and placed a hand on his shoulder. "By continuing, Mr. Henry, keep touching lives the way you touched mine." Henry stood, still holding the deeds, as Lily gave him an encouraging smile. The idea of owning his own bakery had never crossed his mind. His entire life had been spent at the market, always in the open, exposed to the elements, but also part of a lively community. The thought of having a permanent shop was both overwhelming and exciting. "Lily, I'm not sure if I can do this," Henry admitted. Henry finally looked at Lily with a mix of joy and uncertainty. "I'm just a simple man. I've only ever known this market." Lily placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "Mr. Henry, you've spent so many years bringing happiness to people through your hard work and dedication. This bakery isn't just a place for you, it's an opportunity to showcase your craft in a new light." The following days were a whirlwind of emotions and preparations for Henry. Lily had arranged everything. The shop was renovated, equipped with modern yet traditional tools that honored Henry's simple, honest style of baking. When Henry unlocked the bakery doors for the first time, it felt like stepping into a new chapter of his life. The bakery was located on a busy street, not far from the market. The sign above the door made Henry smile. Henry's Bread Shop. It was simple but meaningful. The grand opening became a small event in the town. Friends, old market customers, and curious passers-by came to see the new shop and congratulate Henry. Lily stood by his side, smiling proudly. "This is your moment, Mr. Henry," she said softly. "Enjoy it." Henry felt like a young man again, filled with energy and hope. As the first customers entered, the aroma of fresh bread and pastries filled the cozy space. Henry greeted everyone with the same warm smile he had always worn and realized that this fresh start was exactly what he needed. It wasn't just a business, it was a home, a place where he could continue spreading joy through his craft. A few weeks after the opening of Henry's Bread Shop, the baker's daily life had transformed. He loved working in his own bakery, basking in the warmth of the ovens and the comforting scent of freshly baked bread that filled the room. Customers came regularly, some familiar faces from the market, others new neighbors. It was a time of transition. but also a time of happiness for Henry. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the bakery's large windows, the bell above the door chimed. Henry looked up, ready to greet a customer. To his surprise, it wasn't an ordinary visitor. An older man, dressed in worn but clean clothing, stepped hesitantly inside. His face was deeply lined, and his posture betrayed a hint of unease. "Good day," the man said in a quiet voice. Henry, ever friendly, smiled warmly. "Good day, how can I help you?" The man hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I heard there's a good baker here who used to work at the market." Henry's smile grew broader. "That's me. I used to sell my bread at the market, but now I'm here." The man nodded, his eyes scanning the room as if searching for something. Finally, he said, I've seen you before. Many years ago, I often looked for work at the market. I remember seeing you help a little girl. You gave her bread, even though..." The man trailed off, his voice thick with emotion. "It wasn't much, but it was the right thing to do." He smiled gently. "It was more than you think. I just wanted to tell you that your kindness didn't go unnoticed. People like you make the world a better place." And Henry was deeply moved. It was a simple moment, but it reminded him that every good deed ripples outward, often unnoticed at the time. After the man left, Henry spent the evening reflecting on his words. It wasn't the first time someone had mentioned his acts of kindness, but this conversation struck a chord. It reminded him that even the smallest gestures could leave a lasting impact far beyond what one might imagine. In the days that followed, the bakery grew increasingly popular. Customers didn't come only for the fragrant bread or the perfectly crisp rolls, but also for Henry's warm, welcoming nature. He listened to their stories, remembered their names, and always had a kind word to offer. Many said they felt truly welcome in his shop, something rare in a busy modern world. But Henry's dedication went beyond running the bakery. One morning, he noticed a young boy standing outside, gazing longingly into the shop window. His thin frame and the way he pressed his nose to the glass reminded Henry of someone from long ago. The boy's clothes were dirty, and his face revealed that he hadn't eaten properly in a long time. Henry immediately thought of Lily and felt a pang in his heart. Without hesitation, he grabbed a bag, filled it with bread and pastries, and stepped outside. "Here you go, my boy," he said with a smile as warm as the freshly baked bread. "Take this home with you." The boy looked up at him, startled but grateful. He took the bag with trembling hands. "Thank you, sir," he murmured quietly before running off. Henry watched him go, but instead of sadness, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He knew he had given the boy a moment of hope, just as he had done for Lily all those years ago. That evening, as Henry closed the shop, he reflected on the many encounters that had shaped his life. He realized it wasn't just the grand gestures that mattered, but the small, everyday acts of kindness. Though he had never sought recognition or thanks, he understood now that every act of compassion had the power to make a difference, sometimes in ways far greater than he could ever imagine. One day, while Henry was busy selling bread in the bakery, Lily walked through the door once more. She seemed even more confident and radiant than before, though her smile was as warm and genuine as ever. "Mr. Henry," she began, "I have a favor to ask." Henry set down the basket of bread and looked at her curiously. "Of course, Lily. What can I do for you?" Lily took a deep breath before replying, "I'd like you to meet my guests at an event. It's a celebration for my company, but it's also an opportunity to thank people like you, those who helped me along the way." Henry was visibly surprised. "Lily, I'm just a simple baker. What place would I have at such an event?" Lily smiled and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Mr. Henry, you may not have great wealth or famous titles, but you possess something far more valuable, a heart that inspires others." The event was held in an elegant venue adorned with flowers and soft, warm lighting. Henry, who had felt unsure at first, was welcomed with open arms by Lily. She led him through the room, introducing him to various people, employees, business partners, and other guests. Each time she introduced Henry, she told his story, how a simple act of kindness had changed her life. The guests listened attentively, and Henry felt his face flush. He wasn't used to being in the spotlight, but the warmth and appreciation he received from the crowd gradually put him at ease. By the end of the evening, Lily took the microphone and invited Henry onto the stage. "This man," she said, looking at him with admiration, "showed me that the world can be a better place when people care for one another. Without him, I wouldn't be here today." The audience erupted into applause, and Henry felt tears welling up in his eyes. For the first time in his life, he understood that the small actions he had never thought remarkable had a profound impact. It was a moment that would change him forever. And after the emotional event, Henry returned to his bakery, but something had shifted. It wasn't just the shop that now felt like his own, it was a deeper understanding of the value of his actions. He realized that his small world on the market and in the bakery reached far beyond what he had ever imagined. In the weeks that followed, Henry began living with even greater intention. Inspired by Lily's words, he set up a small corner in the bakery where people who couldn't afford bread could take something for free. A simple wooden sign read, "Take what you need and leave what you can." The community responded overwhelmingly. Customers began buying extra to fill the basket, and the bakery became a place of exchange and solidarity. Henry often smiled as he watched a small piece of bread bring hope once again. His story, and Lily's, wasn't over. They had only just begun to ripple outward, touching lives in ways neither of them could have imagined. Thank you for joining me on this heartfelt journey of kindness and transformation. Stories like these remind us of the power of even the smallest gestures to change lives. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more inspiring tales, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Your support means the world and helps us keep sharing these incredible stories. See you in the next one.